Hello again, internet friends. Today I wanted to talk to you about a subject that I always come back to periodically because it just seems to be something that never goes away. It's always talked about, discussed, and disagreed about, and that is functional fitness. What is functional? And specifically in this video, I want to talk to you about why I think the squat, bench, and deadlift, the powerlifting movements, are very functional, even though they kind of have a reputation for not being functional in many circles. So, even though on this channel we always talk about fitness in relation to worst case scenario preparedness, I wanted to use Brian Shaw as an example because I think when you take a lot of these ideas to an extreme, it's easier to illustrate the point that you're trying to make. And in this case, we're dealing with the world's strongest man, multi-time world's strongest man winner, Brian Shaw. And so I think by looking at what he does in competition and how he prepares for that competition, I'm going to be able to use that as evidence to make the argument that the power lifts are in fact very much functional and should be a part of everybody's repertoire if they want to be a well-rounded, well-prepared, functional athlete that can kind of respond to any situation. So in that first clip, you saw Brian Shaw compete at the Arnold Classic, and he lifted what I believe is still to this day a world record stone lift of 555 pounds, which is a really incredible feat of strength. What's so interesting about Brian Shaw is that even though he's handling a lot of odd, unconventional objects in competition to perform feats of strength with, just from watching his YouTube videos, listening to podcasts with him, and being a fan of his over the years, it seems that a large portion of his training, or maybe even a majority of his training, is made up of a deadlift, a squat, and a heavy press of some kind, even going as far as to do a heavy bench press. Even though he doesn't do that in competition, he has this base of barbell training the way you would see a powerlifter and even sometimes a bodybuilder lift. I wasn't able to find the video of him saying it himself, but if I recall correctly, he has a video where he discusses how he thinks it's very important for strongman competitors to have a base of strength that they've built with these barbell lifts, the squat, bench, and deadlift, and in a strongman's case, more so overhead press than bench press. So even though a large portion of his training, he is doing sports-specific things that he's actually going to be doing in competition, like actually picking up stones and lifting them over certain heights, or picking up circus dumbbells and pressing them overhead. He's actually practicing the skill of the events he's going to be doing in competition. He has this huge amount of his training dedicated to just general strength work with these barbells. So the first thing I want to talk about is why I think he does that, and then after that, we'll talk about how that applies to us more normal people who just want to be in shape generally, but aren't necessarily concerned about a strength competition. So to address that first question of why is his training made so heavily up of barbell movements, even though he's not doing those in competition, think of it this way. Brian Shaw's best stone lift is 555 pounds. His best deadlift is around 1,000 pounds or more. So his deadlift is almost twice as much as his best stone lift. And this is because on a barbell, we're able to grip the weight, we're able to keep the weight very close to us, and so that is generally speaking going to allow us to use more weight, and that's also true in the case of Brian, as opposed to the stone lift where he's having to wrap his arms around this very smooth object where there's nothing to really grab onto, and not only does he have nothing to grab onto, but the center of the object's gravity is much farther away from his body than the barbell is. And so by having that barbell that we can grip more easily and we can actually wield this heavy object easier, keep it closer to our body, which allows us to make the movement more efficient, all of these things add up to us being able to use more weight on the barbell lift. And in Brian's case, he can deadlift almost twice as much as he can stone lift because the position and the grip that it allows us to have is just better, and so we can lift more weight with it. And so, even though it's obviously very important to practice how he's going to play, while he's trying to build general strength, why not have him use an exercise that's just going to allow him to move the most weight possible through this long range of motion where he's activating all of these muscle groups that he's going to also be using in competition? And that really gets down to kind of the base of my argument as to why I think the powerlifting movements are functional. Because they allow us to handle more weight than any other exercise. That's not to say that you can't get stronger with other exercises, but if you think about a kettlebell swing, you can take a lot of time to try and get good at a kettlebell swing, add weight to it, and all these different things. But even the strongest guys are handling 50, 75, maybe 100-pound kettlebells. But you can have a person who's relatively untrained handling 2, 3, even 400 pounds on a deadlift within a couple of months or a year of when they first start training. And so it kind of goes back to our original question, which is what is functional strength and why do I think these lifts are functional? If we try and imitate so closely everything we're looking to do in the real world in the gym, sometimes we miss out on the benefits of these lifts. If all Brian did was stone lift and practice with stones, he would obviously still be very strong, but I don't necessarily know if he would be able to use 555 pounds because he wouldn't have built up all this raw general strength handling 7, 8, 900 pounds on deadlifts for multiple reps and sets year after year, which is obviously going to have a huge amount of carryover to his ability to pick that stone up off the ground. So hopefully you can kind of see the picture I'm trying to paint here. If you can lift a 4 or 500 or 600 pound deadlift off the floor, if you can squat with 4 or 500 pounds, picking up a person who's wounded who weighs 220 is not going to be a problem. If you can bench press 300 or 400 pounds as opposed to somebody who can't, your potential to punch somebody in the face really hard is going to be a lot greater. Simply because your body has done these exercises that allowed it to train and build up the ability to produce these huge amounts of force that you can then take into other athletic ventures. And so I'm not saying that if you are a physical preparedness athlete and you're looking to respond to any type of situation that you should only do these lifts. If you're an athlete or a prepper with a physical preparedness mentality, you want to be ready for anything, you want to be strong. That's absolutely something you should want to be. And if you want to be strong, some of the best tools we have are the squat, the deadlift, and some type of heavy press and heavy pull. These powerlifting, bodybuilding type movements, simply because they allow us to use the most weight through a long range of motion, and they allow us to activate a lot of muscle groups all at the same time in concert. And that is going to have some of the best carryover as far as strength into whatever real life situation that we want to be ready for. So I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. Let me know what you would like to see videos on in the future. If you're not following me on Instagram, that's where I post most often. If you have questions or suggestions about videos you'd like to see, please hop over there and let me know in the messages. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.